Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Friday, July the 4th, 2025, as we celebrate anniversary number 249 of the nation's independence. And I wanted to chat today with our good friend Frank Burke up in Wisconsin. Hello, Frank. How are you?
Hi, Silvio. Doing very well, thank you.
All right. It's always, of course, a great honor and a great pleasure to say hello to you, and
Well, same
especially
here.
when we do these holiday conversations. We've done a few of them over the years, and in the past, you were kind enough one time to read the Declaration, or at least a lot of portions of it, to us, which I thought was great. But this year, I want to focus on something a little bit different, Frank, and July the 4th, for somebody like me, means a lot because I guess I value freedom maybe more than the typical person does. And every July the 4th, I'm very lucky. I've always felt very fortunate and very lucky that I get to celebrate this. And I thank my late parents for having had the vision of leaving Cuba and allowing me to grow up in a free country. So that's how I associate July the 4th. It's not so much with the Declaration of Independence, which I do, of course, but with my own independence, if I could put it that way, or my own freedom. And so I've always been very proud of this day, have always been willing, to participate in any activity or certainly join in celebration. I know that for many of us, that means cooking out, but that's okay. That's part of the plan too. And this year, I was very troubled, Frank, in the last week or so to hear or to read that there are Americans who are not proud of their country or not proud of July 4th. Unfortunately, it's a lot of young people who are in this group. A lot of young people, not all of them, let's be fair, not all of them, but still too many, in my opinion. And I don't understand that. I mean, I'm sitting here saying, wait a minute, you're not proud of this? What are you proud of? I mean, can you think of something else that you would make you more proud? And so I'm very troubled by all of this, Frank, and angry really in a way. And I'm wondering what you think of it, Frank. You I'm sure have given this a lot of thought over the years, and you're just as proud as I am, I'm sure, of July
Absolutely.
4th. But what do you make of this attitude on the part of so many really young people that they're not proud of the country, Frank?
Well, I think what it is, frankly, is an absence of gratitude, and that permeates their entire lives. And I'll give you an example because, my father came from Ireland, and my great grandmother, who was married to someone else who came from Ireland, uh, provided ice cream on only 2 days of the year, her birthday and the 4th of July. So we always have ice cream on the 4th of July.
Did
But
she
that,
make it herself? Did she
no, no,
make it?
they'd buy it.
Oh, they buy it. Okay.
But the interesting thing is this, and that has indirectly something to do with this. You know, um, when you have parents who came over from another country and found out how much more they had in the United States and were able to do what they wanted to do, what they needed to do, and to have children, and they would inculcate them with a lot of things, with patriotism. If like my parents, they had gone through the Great Depression, you always knew about it. To that extent, I've always considered myself a child of the Depression,
Hmm.
meaning you don't waste anything. You do not waste anything. You are not, even if you had a lot of money, there are things you wouldn't do with it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And when I see kids, they'll buy a soda or take a soda, even kids in my own family, and they'll take a couple of sips out of it and walk away from it. Hey, when we were kids, we didn't have soda all the time. It was something you had at a special time. So, lacking the appreciation of what the alternative is, I think a lot of these young people have listened to too many Hollywood people, bad teachers, an inferior educational system that doesn't teach history in the correct way. They've gone through all of that, and they've come to the conclusion that, hey, it's cool not to be enthusiastic.
Right.
It's cool not to admit it. And that's not just patriotism. Take a look at their personal relationships. Look at what's happening with the number of them who don't want to get married, who are still living at home, who have no ambition. Why? Because they can. There was a time you and our parents wouldn't have tolerated, oh, yes, come on back, sleep in the cellar, as long as you want. That would not happen.
No.
So you're looking at that it's that absence of gratitude, I think.
Well, that reminds me of a story. I have to get this one in about my father and a baseball glove. One day, I guess I was about 17. I went to my dad, and you know how much of a baseball fan I am. And he was too. He was also a big baseball fan. And I went to my dad and I said, hey, obviously in Spanish, I said, I need a new baseball glove, Father, anticipating that he would buy me one.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, hey, that's great. And then he said in a very good Cuban Spanish, he said, or Spanish, but with a Cuban flavor, he said, you should buy one. Get a job and buy one. You'll appreciate it more. And I was stunned, Frank. I was stunned because I had no idea that he was going to say that.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I thought he was just going to give me $10 and I would run over to the store and buy me a glove. And he said, no, get a job by me. And that's how I eventually ended up working in a pizza shop called Piccolo's there in Wisconsin and Milwaukee, there on Capitol Drive. And I ended up in this pizza shop where they had three brothers who ran the place, the Piccolo brothers, Dominic, Joseph, I think, and another Italian named Giovanni or whatever. And so anyway, I don't know if they're still there, but it's a big memory of mine that they're on Capitol Drive in Appleton. That's where they were in that area. But it's the point you're making that I certainly valued that glove a lot. But not only that, but it was the experience that he taught me that, this was not free, that the cash he was going to pull out of his pocket to give me for the glove, it didn't grow on trees, as my mom used to say. He had to work for it.
Yes.
So I think there is something to that. And it's interesting to me, Frank, because the lack of pride, the lack of respect for country is greater among young people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems like over 21, 25, it's okay. But it's in that college group where it seems to be at a low point. And then you ask yourself, like you were saying, look what they're learning in school. What did they learn about American history in school? They learn more about slavery than George Washington. They learn more about, segregation than they do, the great things this country did. And I'm not downplaying. I mean, I don't want somebody to misunderstand me. I'm not downplaying slavery or segregation. Those were bad things, but that's not the whole story.
No. There's
a lot more to the story than that. So I think, I mean, you're right. It's lack of gratitude, maybe lack of understanding, Frank, of how fortunate they are. What do you think of that?
Oh, I think very much so. Because, how can I say this? If you've never felt something, how do you get to it? If you've never felt grief, then how do you really understand it? I mean, as we grow up, we understand that there are things we can't understand. When a friend dies and you go to their wife or their family and, you talk to them about grief, what do you say? You can't say much.
No.
Because you're not there, but they are. And I think that's part of the problem. These people have never experienced anything but a relatively easy life.
Right.
When they talk about poverty in America, you are still talking about people who are living with automobiles, radios and television, air conditioning.
Right.
Compare that with poverty in Ghana or Congo.
Sure.
It's a little bit different.
It sure is. It sure is. And even, even growing up, I mean, an air condition, we myself and our family, we did not have air conditioning units in our home in Cuba.
Right.
Now, and we were a middle class family, but people just didn't have them.
Yeah.
It was not something they did in hotels.
Yes.
And I know my dad's office had an air conditioning unit, like on the ones they put on the window, where
Absolutely.
they were like these little machines that they put on the window and you plug in and cold air comes out. In fact, I remember our very first night in the United States. We landed in Miami, and we spent our very first night at a hotel. And I remember my brother and I were sleeping in this room, and we couldn't figure out how to turn down the air conditioning. And we were literally freezing to death because with this machine, we couldn't figure out how to turn it down because it was warm outside, but we were, I guess, more accustomed to sleeping when it was warm outside. We didn't need the air conditioning unit blowing and we couldn't figure it out. And we were sitting there struggling all night trying to shut this thing down. And a lot of it was simply not knowing how to run the machine. Honestly, I'm sure that if my brother and I had thought about it, maybe we would have just unplugged it.
Right.
That would have been, but again, it was just the air conditioning is something that you're right. Many people don't have. In many places. Yeah.
When I was a kid, we had exhaust fans that never did a heck of a lot.
Right.
And you'd go to the supermarket because that was air conditioned. Right. Mom, can I go to the store? And yeah. And you shop very slowly because it's cool in there on a hot day. But
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say these the younger people, they're not letting themselves get excited over much.
Right.
And so when it comes to these demonstrations, they don't know what they're demonstrating for or against. It's just like I can remember talking to a friend of mine who grew up in Wisconsin, and he talked about the fact that, yes, I was at the demonstrations against the Vietnam War in Madison. Mm-hmm. And I said, really? Were you a real protester? He said, no, I went there to meet girls.
Right.
And, I think it's the same thing today. They want the excitement, the sense of belonging, the madness of the crowd,
Right. Well, I think the best indication that they don't know what they're marching for is when you see Gays for Palestine.
Yes.
I mean, if that's not a oxymoron, what is?
Exactly.
Gays for Palestine. I mean, if they ever showed up in Palestine with those placards, they'd be lucky to get out of there alive.
Yeah.
But again, in all fairness, though, Frank, I don't want to sound too negative because in all fairness, a lot of young people do feel very proud of their country, and many of them do military service, or they're the ones who, grow up and I guess get married and have kids and do the stuff that I guess would be considered normal. But it's a certain group, and I wonder. I raised the question, and you touched on it. It's the educational system that seems to put more emphasis on all the negative things about the country than anything else. And again, George Washington.
Yes.
I was watching one time an interview with Elon Musk, and Elon Musk was saying that he brought in a bunch of high school people to his company or whatever to give him a tour. And when they were talking about the history of the country, he said, the only thing these high school kids knew about George Washington is that he was a slave owner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's all you know about George Washington, you need to go back because, my gosh, there was a lot more to that man than the fact that he happened to be a slave owner at Mount Vernon. I mean, I guess those slaves were probably there from his family or whatever before.
Sure.
But so I think you're right. The education. I also want to raise another point, Frank, and I want to get your reaction to this. How much of this is just we hate Trump, and you have this phenomenon of we hate Trump because Trump is walking around with an American flag, or like today he's doing a big
Mhm.
July 4th. So how much of it is just we hate Trump and we associate Trump with the flag and July 4th? How much of it you think is that?
Well, I think it's a lot of it. And I'll tell you what I think is a big part of it. The irony of it is that Trump is somebody that they don't understand. Trump is very different. Now he can be coarse, he can be braggadocious, he can be obnoxious at times. But I think partly you lived in Milwaukee. I grew up in New York. Coming from a city, you understand the type of person, and coming from and knowing people at different social levels, you understand the type of person that Donald Trump is. He is not he grew up, yes, he had a lot of advantages. They were wealthy, but he was in the building trades. And when you're in that kind of trade, you're speaking to people of all different educational levels, types, and you have to be tough. You have to be a little bit maybe on the rough side. And it's what's ironic is that these kids and lots of people, now it's not just kids, but people who are always crusading, oh, we hate people who are different than we are. They hate Trump because he's different than they are. And what I laugh about with the Democrats and all their criticisms of Trump, being a student of history, Trump reminds me of one other president. And it's not the cultured JFK. It's not, some of these well spoken guys. It's Harry Truman.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Harry Truman personally and you look at Trump, there are a number of real similarities. Harry
Right.
was a kind of tough guy. They called him Give Him Hell Harry. And his vocabulary was, kind of spicy at times. And but he had the ability, like Trump does, to make tough decisions.
Right.
He made the decision to drop the atomic bomb very early in his presidency, after knowing nothing about the Manhattan Project.
Mm-hmm.
He made the decision to go into Berlin for the Berlin airlift.
Right.
He
Incredible
defied
decision.
Russians repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
He was a patriot. He loved this country. Yeah, he came out of a political machine in Missouri, but that's the kind of guy he was.
Right.
And
No, I think you're right about that, and what you're saying about Trump. He rubs people the wrong way. I guess that's what you're trying to say.
yeah,
But I know a lady in New York who was telling me that her husband worked in the Trump administration, and that he's a black man. He's a African American man,
mhm,
actually Puerto Rican black. And he was saying that Trump, uh, her husband used to tell her, "There's nothing racist about this man. He'll sit down at a work table at a construction site with any workers. I mean, he's very earth with these people. He relates to them. He
yeah,
obviously, he's not hammering away like they are, but he understands them.
yes,
I think in a very, very special way. He also, Frank, reminds me of another president too, and that's Andrew Jackson.
very much.
Yeah, he was kind of a tough cookie himself. He had that great line when his wife passed away, and he looked at the people that he blamed for his wife's death. If you remember, they were accusing his wife of being
Yes,
unfaithful and the whole story. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, "I hope that God forgives you because I won't," or
mhm,
something like that. That he said, "I
yes,
hope that God forgives you because I'm not." And and
exactly,
and I
exactly.
think Trump, in some ways, is that way. I mean, I
Yeah,
would not want to be on, if there's a gang fight, I wouldn't want to be on the other side of Trump,
no, I wouldn't either.
because he doesn't take prisoners. So I, you know, but I do think there is something about Trump that drives these people crazy. and even crazy enough to not be proud of their country. That's how crazy this is, this nuttiness that they have with Trump. Well, let me ask you to share if you remember a July 4th story, and then I'll tell you my favorite July 4th story as well. So you want to go first and just remember any July 4th? I love the one about your grandmother and ice cream, by the way. That's a fabulous one. But any other one that comes to mind from growing up in New York and your father working at Sears? Anything like that comes to mind? July 4th.
Well, it's one of the things that I'll tell you that, and then I'll tell you another one that's kind of a very personal, but on the more humorous side. Where I grew up, it was kind of like a suburb of New York, Forest Hills, not the rich section, but the working class section. And Main Street was Metropolitan Avenue, and there was always a parade. And at that time, when I was quite small, there were still some veterans of the Spanish-American War who rode in the back of a convertible. Then, of course, there were a good number of World War I veterans. And, of course, the World War II veterans who were kids. This was like, let's say, 1955. The war had only been over for 10 years.
Yeah, they were like in their late 20s, early 30s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
maybe younger.
Two things that I'll bring out about that. Number one is the American Legion was very big. And all the stores were hung with bunting and these beautiful blue and gold banners that said "Welcome Legionnaires" and had the symbol of the American Legion on it. And of course, there was a couple of bars that were decorated where the Legionnaires would meet, and on a regular basis, maybe every second Tuesday or something. And I didn't realize it until much later. But for many of these men, it was a group therapy session because they had seen some awful things. And who could they possibly talk about with them except other people who had been in that position?
Right.
And the second thing was one of the men in our neighborhood, he was an older man, a World War I veteran, Mr. Sullivan. And Mr. Sullivan had been in the regiment called the Fighting 69th, which was a direct descendant of the Irish Brigade. It was the 69th Regiment, New York National Guard, that was federalized. And the man in charge, the commander, was Wild Bill Donovan, Major Donovan, who later was the founder of the OSS, which became the CIA. He was a very intelligent, originally a lawyer from, I think, Buffalo, New York. The chaplain was Father Duffy, and his statue today stands in Times Square. But my father had a flagpole in front of the house. It was really a piece of pipe. And it was maybe a story and a half. And having worked for Sears, he was able to get flags that had flown over the store, and they were totally outsized. They came down probably to 4 feet, 3 feet maybe from the ground. They were huge. And as a kid, I'm maybe 12, and I was standing out. Flagpole was on the corner. Our house was on the corner of the block. Our flagpole was on the corner of the lot, really. And I heard somebody say, it was on the 4th of July. And he said, "Hi, Frank." And I turned around, and here was Mr. Sullivan of the Fighting 69th. And the flag was in the wind behind him. And I've never forgotten that image.
No, that's a great story. Well, let me tell you mine. It's not, it's a story and kind of a story, I guess. I come to the United States, and my very first July 4th, I hear one of my teachers say that John Adams and Thomas Jefferson had died on July 4th, 1826.
Yes.
50 years after the Declaration, exactly 50 years. I think I remember correctly. I think Adams died first, and then
Hmm.
later during the day, Jefferson. And somebody told me that story, and I thought they were putting me on.
Uh-huh.
I just no, come on,
Yeah.
that'd be a great movie, but that really didn't happen, did it? I mean, I was skeptical. I'll be honest with you, because it just seemed like it was too cute to check, as they like to say, or too good to check. I mean, come on, really? Two of the founding fathers died 50 years on the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. I remember saying to myself, that would be a great movie. But did that really happen? So then I go to my at the time I had a grade school teacher named Miss Jones, who was an absolutely wonderful lady, a young woman. Her name was Miss Jones, a beautiful young woman, absolutely wonderful person. And I said, Miss Jones, uh, listen, I just heard something, and I thought maybe you can help me clarify. But I just heard that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration. That didn't really happen, Miss Jones, did it? And she looked at me and said, no, it did. It actually did. It did happen. And I was like, for a second there, I can say to myself, okay, this is like a miracle. All of a
Right.
sudden, I kept thinking these guys must be connected to God or something, that this is like a miracle. You know what I mean? I'm saying, oh
Yeah.
my God, this is like, this is like something out of the Bible, something like
Yeah.
that. You mean these two guys that? So that was my first July 4th in the United States, learning about that. And every single year on July 4th, I read about it. And
Uh-huh.
I read the same thing, because there's just so much you can read about it. But I even post a little thing on my blog about it. Me, that I don't know, that's just something magical that something like that would happen. So that's really my favorite July 4th story. I guess there's a couple of others that I've learned over the years, that Calvin Coolidge was born on July 4th. I guess that's fitting that he would be born
Uh-huh.
on July 4th. Um, and then, of course, the Battle of Gettysburg, a lot of it
Yes.
happened around
Early
the
July.
July
Yeah.
4th. So anyway, you know, but that story about Adams and Jefferson, that just, I said to myself, man, this is a real country with a real story. When I heard that one, I said, this is a great story. And,
Exactly.
and I just couldn't help but feel like, wow, this is like out of the Bible or something. I said,
Well,
I mean,
I will now tell you my personal one.
yeah.
Really has nothing to do with patriotism. It was the 4th of July, and we had bought this old farm in the western part of the state, and we were fixing up the house. And we had this guy, the house was a wreck. I mean, really, really bad. The porch was being held up by 2x4s when we first bought it, and just incredible. We would go up there and work on weekends, and the porch was collapsing. In fact, I used to cook on a little barbecue grill on the porch, and Peggy, my wife, was always saying, "You're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt out there. Please stop cooking out there." And the only time I stopped cooking is when the porch got to such a pitch that the hot dogs were rolling off the grill. But
All right.
we had this. We had hired this guy to do the walls, to do the sheetrock. So all the furniture had been moved out. By this time, the porch had been straightened. We had a new porch, and it was full of the furniture, tables and everything, but there was nothing on the inside of the first floor of the house. And he was halfway through the job. So, there are these cans of mud, as they call it, for the sheetrock, pieces of sheetrock, dust all over. And it was the 4th. It was a very bad day. It was starting to rain. This guy came back and said, "Look, I can't finish the job." I said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, I took another job down toward Milwaukee, so I'm gonna take that job. But you got to finish." No, just give me the money you owe me, and I've got to go. So I said, I'm not giving you any money until well, whatever. But that wasn't the point. So we finally got rid of him. He left. And at that time, I was reading a biography of Fatty Arbuckle, the silent movie star. So that night, it really started to rain. And I'm sitting on the porch in a rocking chair next to a table with a kerosene lamp on it that's lit. And by the light of the lamp in a driving rainstorm, I'm reading the life story of Fatty Arbuckle. And I stopped and said, this is the 4th of July. I'll never forget.
No, that's right. And one of these days, you got to send me the title of a movie that Fatty made so I can watch it.
Okay.
If you let me know. But Frank, as always, thank you so much for your entertaining contribution, as always, to our July 4th show. And I'm sure we're already thinking about doing another one next July 4th. We're certainly thinking about doing one for Thanksgiving. I guess that would be our next big holiday. One year we did one, if you remember, for the Gettysburg Address. Remember that one?
Yes.
Yeah, we did that one also. So, but I want to thank you so much for your time, and I want to wish you a very happy July the 4th with your family up in Wisconsin. And we're a little humid down here, but everybody's doing great.
90 degrees.
Yeah, everybody's
today.
Doing great.
One thing I would like to do, I'd like to close.
Sure.
I'm not going to read a poem, but I'm going to deliver one line from a poem by Sir Walter Scott. And it's in line with what we're talking about today. And the line is, breathes there the man with soul so dead, who never to himself have said, this is my country, my native land.
Ooh.
So
good one there from Sir Walter. Good one to close the show with, Frank. I really enjoyed it. Good timing as always on your part. That's one of your best virtues is timing and when we do these things. But thank you so much, Frank. Have a great remaining of July 4th and weekend, and we'll do a political show before Thanksgiving.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, but we'll figure that one out later. But definitely make plans for Thanksgiving or Gettysburg, whichever one.
Well, you too, and to you and the audience, God bless, and God bless America.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you so much for your time. Our good friend Frank Burke joining us on July the 4th. We've always done many shows with Frank in the past, or videos or audio before when we did the audios about these national holidays. We normally have Frank join us and we talk about it. And today I really wanted to talk to him about this very sad phenomenon. And I've got a post coming out about this Saturday morning where people, a percentage, again, not everybody, we're not talking here about everybody in the country, but a percentage of people who are not proud of their country. And I don't understand that. If you're not proud of your country, you're not proud of the United States, what are you proud of? Give me an example of a country that you're proud of, because I don't know too many others where you would enjoy the opportunities and the freedoms and the opportunities and freedoms, let me repeat it, that you have here. So I wanted to chat with Frank and get his thoughts. And of course, we always have a good story that Frank relates to us. Happy 4th. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.